Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. You're going to have a great time in the next few minutes hearing from really good strategies from some CEOs and entrepreneurs in Arkansas on the Shrimp Tank, where we teach you how to go from a shrimp to a shark in the business world. Hey everyone, welcome to the post-show wrap-up of the Arkansas Shrimp Tank podcast. I'm your host, Rich Jensen, along with my co-host, David Sims. We were joined today by our guest, David Shindler, who is the Executive Vice President at Iberia Bank. Each week on the post-show wrap-up, we like to bring you some of the highlights from our conversations with some of the brightest and best CEOs and entrepreneurs, business owners in and around the state of Arkansas. So we learned a lot and we laughed a lot.
It's a great show. Great show.
You know, I thought he was going to be so dry, and then we just laughed. So.
It was really cool to have a descendant of the guy who's famous for Schindler's List too.
I wish I could take claim for that.
Podcast on that.
You are such a liar.
I did that with Davy Crockett the other day on the one podcast.
That was great.
Our last guest was a direct descendant of Davy Crockett, according to him.
Did he have the bear with him too?
They do have a bear.
Dan the bear.
That's right, Dan the bear. All right. So anyway, yeah, it was a great show. You got to listen to the podcast. And one of the things I asked you, David, was about, okay, I'm a C-suite executive, got a $10 million company going to $50 million. What's the skill that I need to go from there? And particularly from a banking standpoint, what are you looking for with your 38 years of experience in the banking industry?
Mostly planning. I want to see that this C-suite skill set is there, that he's got good support, financial, operations, human resources, people, that they have to plan to go from 10 to 50, and they put a strategy in place, and we support that strategy. And what you're looking that's a critical part of your underwriting decision as a banker, isn't it? I mean, absolutely.
Who is this guy leading this thing? Does he really got the goods?
The skill set necessary to understand that he's going from 10 to 50 and it's a significantly different company, 5 times bigger.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think you also mentioned you got to have a lot of structures and processes in place to go from there to
absolutely.
Because now you're kind of going from a mom and pop type, very successful mom and pop type enterprise. Yeah. But now you're going to something that's really significant.
Significant funding and organization to get there.
I also asked you for like an entrepreneur, a success story and a horror story. And like the politician we turned out you are, you didn't quite answer it, but you did give us 2 profiles.
That's right, yeah.
Well, and
that was good.
It's obviously I can't discuss client names and histories and stories in here, but the reality of it is success stories come from a humbleness. How have they built their company to where they're at, and how are they moving it forward? Again, similar to the first answer, do they have the people necessary to support their growth? Right. And the success stories they have, they listen to their bankers, they listen to their attorneys, their insurance people, the investment advisors. They understand the financial necessities to get from point A to point B.
And one of the big things you mentioned was something called pride on the horror story. Share with our viewers a little bit.
When it comes to pride, you often have situations where it's challenging to make headway with ego. And ego gets in the way of decision making at times. Yeah. And that's probably the big boo out there.
And you don't really listen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What?
So another thing you talked about was kind of the business model sweet spot on the podcast. Expand that a little bit for our viewers.
All businesses, small, medium, and large, have a balance sheet and an income statement, and they're structured in a way to support that business's operations. The question is, do the businesses understand what that provides to them? Where's their sweet spot operations? How do their assets and liabilities support their income statement, and vice versa? How is their income statement a reflection of their assets and liabilities? And most companies have a sweet spot with regard to revenue, expenses, personnel. It's a function of finding that and working it well.
Yeah, and I would imagine, again, if I'm coming to you, I'm at $10 million and I need some financing, I imagine in that underwriting process, you're going to look at that. You're going to analyze that, and it's going to give me a perspective, a third-party critical perspective on what am I not seeing?
Absolutely.
You're going to help me see with, again, 38 years of experience in the banking industry with Iberia Bank.
It doesn't look like it's a day over 37.
I know. That's right. And we're still looking for that big old fro picture that you had when you were in
1976. Just go back to 1976. You can see that.
And by the way, just before we end this video, if you are an entrepreneur, got a startup business, 2 or 3 years in, That's good advice. Think about your sweet spot and capitalize that and strengthen those sweet spots and have someone tell you where there's gaps and how to fill in those gaps because that's what's really going to grow you and where you want to be.
And we said on the podcast, David early on in his career had a mentor who kind of drew a chair and said, hey, for a business to be successful, it's got to have 4 legs. What are those 4 legs?
Your banker, your attorney, your insurance, and your investment advisor.
Right. And, of course, attorney always comes first. Banker.
It's just a function of what you need at the time.
He comes first because he's 6 feet under us.
That's right.
Hey, David, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. For those who want to find out more about your role, about Iberia, or actually maybe need to find a personal banker, one of those legs of that chair, how would they best get a hold of you?
The best way to contact me is at Iberia Bank here in Little Rock, 501-661-7778. Please call me.
All right. Hey, if you want to catch the full podcast, go to arkansas.shrimptankpodcast.com. You can subscribe on iTunes. We're also now part of iHeartRadio. So there's all sorts of things that if I was a millennial, I'd know. But I think there's Google Play and SoundCloud and a few other things that I don't know how to download from.
We're all looking at our millennial producer there.
Our producer keeps us going here. So until next week, stay safe. And remember, in the business world, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimp.
Thank you.